Rarefied group. Great. So last week we got through the second third of the tropes. So let's warm up on those and then we'll finish off all of them. If people need to see the sheet in front of us, I'm sure we can share that. If you have your own edition, you want to look on that, that's fine. Joe probably has it at his fingertips. So it's up to you folks if you feel you need to see it. Anyone, or you all have your own? You have your own. Okay. Okay, good. So let's review from the beginning. And as I've encouraged you to try to emulate the symbols with your hands, let's try that from the beginning. You can mute yourselves as we sing. You can repeat. Mercha tipcha munach et nachta. Let's do a permutation of that one. Tipcha et nachta. That nachta, of course, is a comma. Second group, the only new trope is sof pasuk. Means end of the sentence. That's the period. Let's do the entire group. Mercha tipcha. Mercha sof pasuk. A permutation. Tipcha sof pasuk. Great. Group 3. Of course, the tropes for Kadma and Pashta, the first and third tropes, resemble the trope Mercha, but now that it's over the word, it's an entirely different thing. Kadma, Mapach, Pashta, Munach, Katon. Good, let's do permutations. Mapach, Pashta, Katon. Munach, Katon. Pashta, Katon. Good, and of course, the Munach we have in group 3 is a different melody than the one we had in group 1. Okay, 3A, only one variant here. Yativ, which is something that visually looks like mapach, but it comes in front of the word. And in the Trope Trainer edition, it will be triangulated, so it looks totally different. Yativ katon. Great. Getting a little bit more complicated now. Group 4. Darga. Tevir. And Tevir, of course, is a melody for Amen, which starts off each aliyah after the bracha that precedes it. Okay, a variant on group 4 is Mercha Tevir. Mercha Tevir. Great, let's do them together. Mercha Tevir. Good, group 5. Gershayim. Munach. Revi'i. And yet another munach. Munach is different from groups 1 and different from group 3. Try that all together. Gershayim munach revi'i. Great. Now group 5A, there's only one new trope. The second and third tropes, munach revi'i, are identical. But if you have a munach with a long line, which is called a pasik, that indicates that the first munach is chanted differently than the Gershayim. They're similar. It's a variant, but it's not identical. Munach. It's technically called munach pasik, but we don't use the word pasik in the chanting. Munach is the first munach. And the pasik indicates you take a quick little pause, and then you resume with what you had in group 5. Munach revi'i. So just to clarify, I told you the last 2 classes that this sheet looks more complex than it really is because they're repeats. Group 2 is almost identical to group 1, but there's only one new trope. So pasuk. 3A, very similar to group 3, only one new trope, which is yativ. Group 4A is not quite darga tevir. The mercha, which precedes the tevir, is a new mercha, not the same as in groups 1 and 2. It's a short form of darga. It's the beginning and the end of the darga. Mercha tevir. Okay, and then In group 5A, the only new trope is the first long munach. So already groups 1 through 5A, it's really only at most 2/3 of the number of tropes that we've just chanted that you need to learn, because about 1/3 of them are just repeats, okay? Speaking of repeats, in group 6, we have a repeat of what we started group 3 with, kadma. I told you last week that ve'azla, the conjunction ve means and, kadma and azla. Kadma is the same in both groups, kadma. But in this case, it's chanted with really no pause between the two. So listen how they connect. Kadma ve'azla. It's almost like it's one long trope. Great. One more time. Kadma ve'azla. So this can be a little bit confusing because they're mirror images of each other. You have to remember the directionality of these things. And basically, it's the same as mircha tipcha, but instead of being under the word, you flip them and put them over the word, and then they're utterly unrelated musically. Again, any trope which looks like a trope that was under a word, which becomes over a word, has a zero relationship. It's just a technical similarity, okay? Who recalls 6a, the difference between Kadma Ve'ezla, which we just chanted, and Kadma Ge Resh, which is 6a? Razel, is that a hand or is that a royal wave? Okay. You have to unmute.
I know.
You're still muted.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry, bad computer. Okay.
So what's the difference?
So, well, Kadma Vyasla, and then it's Kadma Geresh.
Great.
You're asking for the tune, or you're asking for some
No, well, the tune you
description?
just gave us, which is great that you remember
Yeah.
that. So 3 brownie points for you. But I'm asking visually, how can we tell them apart? They're so similar.
Oh, I'm sorry. The one is on the, in this case, the Azla, it's on the Lamed, which is further down. It's like the fourth letter. And the other one is on the first letter, the areas where the emphasis is made, where the
Correct.
stress is made.
Great. So anytime we have these variant tropes, right, like Yetiv, which looks like Bapach, the difference traditionally was always the placement. Some of them come at the beginning or in front of the word, and some of them come in the middle, or some, as we will learn later, come at the end. So it's upon you to remember the placement issue for those tropes for which placement matters. Most tropes, the placement doesn't matter, right? But Pashta and Kadma, now that you know this, Rachel, you did this already, so let's see if somebody else can explain the difference placement-wise between Kadma and Pashta in group 3. Anybody else recall? Of course, if you get Trope Trainer, the bold facing or the triangulation, etc., does tell them apart, but you should know the traditional difference, because most editions that you look at, for example, the Eitz Chaim, which we use in IKAR, you're not going to have the special bold facing and triangulation. So who can tell us Kadma, Pashta, visual difference, traditional version? It's the answer is kind of there on the sheet if you look in yeah, Joanne.
Kadma's in the middle and Pashta's at the end.
Great, exactly. So Kadma can come, the middle is loosely the way it is. It's really any letter other than the ultimate letter. Pashta has to be on the last letter. And remember how I explained this little complex quirk where if Pashta is on the last letter, but we need to emphasize an earlier syllable, meaning the music setter wanted us to sing a Pashta melody, but we're not emphasizing the last letter, how would they show that? Because if you move the Pashta anywhere other than the last letter, what would you musically think it is? A Kadma. Therefore, what does the editor have to do so we know that it's still a Pashta, but you know where to emphasize it?
Put a second one.
Good, Joe. Put a second one, and one of them is going to be grayed out. So if you ever see 2 of the same trope on one word, what does that mean? Ariella.
That you emphasize the non-grayed out one.
Right. The one that's on the ultimate letter, meaning either either the first letter or the last letter is ignored. The one that's closest to the middle means that's the one that was drawn in solely for purposes of indicating the accent point. Now, there are rare cases.
Sorry, is there an example of that on
It's
the
going to be,
sheet?
well, the example, it's not going to be on the sheet, but if you open up almost any Torah portion where you're looking at, let's say, 10 psukim, you're going to see this because Pashta comes on average, I'd say, once per sentence in the Torah. It's all over the place, and it's rare that even though in Hebrew, I think I told you, if you had to guess as to which syllable gets the emphasis, it's the last syllable. In Hebrew, that's the natural inflection point, the emphasis point. But especially in poetic Hebrew, you shift the accent, meaning in English, you don't say, in a poem, Philadelphia is pronounced Philadelphia. In Hebrew, you would pronounce it Philadelphia. Oftentimes, you shift the emphasis towards the beginning of the word, even if it's a common word, and it gives it more of a stately, poetic vibe. So, unfortunately, you can't just use your general knowledge of accent points in Hebrew. It doesn't work like it does in English. It does vary. And so, with Pashta, oftentimes you will see the second one drawn in there. But that was like a extra credit point because these things are a little bit esoteric. Okay, great. And there was one other, Yetiv, right, which looks like Mapach. I think I gave the answer when I did it, but you can notice 3 and 3A. Julie, what's the difference?
It's off to the side.
Right. So Yetiv is off to the side, jutting out in front of the word, and it will be triangulated if you, at least for this first exercise we all do when I assign Torah readings, I'm going to give you printouts from Trope Trainer, so you will not have to know these subtleties because it's going to be in front of you. But again, I recommend memorizing this because when you're following along in synagogue, at some point, the new editions probably will reflect these changes. Jewish tradition is, as you may have guessed, slow to change anything, especially with relation to the Torah. So, but at some point, I think they'll do it. Okay, so we did Kadma Ve'ezla, and Razel sang for us correctly. Kadma Geresh. So let's all mute again and sing that. Okay, all I can do is say it sounds great, even though I can't hear you. But if I did hear you, you'd all be chanting cacophonously at the same time, and I'd have no clue what was happening. Okay, so now we're starting the fancier tropes, which occur with less frequency and more notes. Okay, we are now on group 7? Munach. Tili Shagedola. Actually, we did this last week. Munach. Again, Tili Shagedola. And let's do its sister, group 8. Munach. Say Munach twice in a row. Tili Shaketana. Now, thimble-wise, it's clear to see that Tili Shagedola is like a backwards Q or a magnifying glass, which is on the first letter of the word, the line facing inwards, and Tili Shaktana, which literally means small Tlisha. Gedola means big one, but that's just random stuff. The Tili Shaketana, which is group 8, is on the last letter of the word, and it's an actual Q. So they're mirror images, and you have to remember which is which. Razel, yeah.
The way I remember it is that Gedola is, I think of it that it's sort of pointing to the right. So most people are right-handed. So Gedola, the majority of people are right-handed.
Yeah, that's
and the
right.
other one is pointing to the left. And so I think the minority of people are left-handed.
So
That's
I'm a
how
lefty. It was funny that you came across that because I used to teach that to my students all the time and found it had zero efficacy. Nobody ever remembered that.
Actually, I taught it to my
Okay.
students,
Oh, that's good.
and
It's a
they did
zeitgeist
remember
thing.
it.
Yeah, mnemonic devices for sure can help. If it works for you, Gedolah is literally means big, and so, but it's on the first letter. So let's try that again. The munach for these 3 groups in a row is all going to be a new but similar munach. So groups 7, 8, and 9 is all munach. Okay, so we started with munach, Tili Shaganola. I'm guessing some of you are making some mistakes because almost nobody gets this one right the first time, but I will give you the benefit of the doubt and assume that you individually are all doing it right. But collectively, there is a rotten apple here, I'm guessing, our experience. Okay, so Tili Shagadola, a bit of an opera exercise. Tili Shaktana, much easier, I think, to chant. Tili Shakatana. Same munach, munach. Tili Shakatana. And of course, it's little, which even though I'm a lefty, for most mere mortals, the left hand is a small one, but for us brilliant right brain people with all the creativity in the world, we're lefties, and it's the opposite. But I won't brag anymore, although I think we do die younger because we operate heavy machinery that's geared for righties. I read somewhere. I'm not making this up, folks. Disadvantage using those wrong scissors and I guess immolating yourself, maybe. I don't know. People do, you die younger from these mistakes. Okay, anyway, all that aside, I told you that 3 munachs in a row are identical. So we already had munach, tlisha gdola, munach, tlisha ktana. At least you know the munach here for group 9. Munach, pazer, pazer. Now, doesn't pazer almost look like a P missing the top? Speaking of tricks, not a mnemonic device, but a visual trick, if you were to draw a line on the top of that backwards 4, it becomes P. P stands for persnickety teacher and for pazer. Okay, pazer. So this one is really like an opera exercise, right? It's just up the scale, down the scale. Again, munach, pazer. So I would say we're now in the realm where if you are reading only one aliyah, and these are all triennial, remember I explained that these are shorter aliyah we do at conservative influenced synagogues. They're all 1/3 of the length of the traditional full one. So when you're dealing with ones this short, there's a good chance you will not see in any one portion some tropes from, let's say, group 6 till the end. You may randomly have all of them, but odds are you'll have 1 or 2 of these and you will not have all of them. There's no rule which says that you have to use a certain trope a certain number of times. It's just decreasing frequency as you get down this page. So what that means is you have to put in the energy to learn this and then to refresh these, because if you do read Torah regularly, I would say the one thing that happens to most Torah readers is they maintain groups 1 through 6-ish, even when they step away for years. But most people come to me and say, I can't remember Tlisha Gdola, I can't remember Tlisha Ktana, I can't remember Zakeh. And so you have to learn them and then listen once in a while. Either that, or you have to probably read every 3 months or so. Otherwise, there's a good chance you're going to forget the complex, rare stuff. Okay, let's do those 3 groups one more time, then we'll finish off. Group 6, Munach, Tlisha Gdola. Great. Group 7, Munach, Tlisha Ketana. Group 8. Or am I off by 1? Yeah, I'm off by 1. Sorry. That was group 8. Group 9. Munach. Pazer. Now, I gave you this analogy when we started. Think of yourself as the sculptor Michelangelo, who used to say his job was just chipping off the dross on the outside of what was already a sculpture which existed perfectly and pristinely inside of that big boulder. So these tropes exist pristinely somewhere, but as you sing them, they don't have to be perfect now. You just have to basically go upwards, go downwards, and keep chipping away. If you get obsessed with trying to get it perfect now, you may get frustrated and drive yourself and your housemates and spouses crazy. So get the form now, let the detail follow. Some of you probably got it right now, but some people, especially at the end, lose a little bit of the exactness. So if you keep listening, this will come over time. Don't be frustrated. Frustrating yourself will more likely than not create a situation where you'll feel like not practicing anymore or not reading Torah. We don't want that. You have to trust that you, like every other bar bat mitzvah kid, many of whom are not instrumentalists or musicians at all, always do get this stuff, okay? Pazer. Okay, good. We're on group 10. Unfortunately, more munachs that are different here. This one starts with a descending munach, really almost like the munach we just had, but the first note goes higher so that it becomes full stepwise downwards into the next trope, zarka, because that's a descent. Listen how this goes. Munach. It's like munach, but just raising that first note. Munach, then zarka. Down the stairs. Zarka. I have a funny feeling the guy who taught me the tropes himself changed that munach just because he thought it would be easier for people to continue the downward motion. My guess is the traditional way is just munach, so I'm not going to be mad if you just do the normal munach and consider this the 4th in a row. But for those who care to do it, we'll do it this way. Munach. Listen to the downwards motion here. Zarka. Munach segol. So this second munach has yet another new one. Munach segol. Now, segol, are you guys aware that the vowel which makes the S sound is called segol? I learned Hebrew reading in Israel in 1st grade. They never taught us vowels. We just kind of assimilated it, and nobody ever taught us the names. But in America, they generally tell you the name. It's called segol. The color purple is also segol. coincidence. But anyway, the 3 dots, the trope Segol, guess what happens if you flip that and put it under a word? It's Segol. It's the same visual, just upside down on top of the word, right? Okay, so that's a good mnemonic device if you even knew what Segol was to begin with. Okay, let's do group 10 again. Munach, Zarka. I kind of try to make a weird little S here. Munach, Segol. A variant on that is skipping all the munachs. Zarka, Segol. Is this one hard to sing? It usually is a train wreck the first couple of weeks. Are you guys getting it? Zarka. You're getting it? Okay. Yeah, again, just keep listening to the recording. It will click. But that may be the hardest one. And finally, group 11 here. Zakef Gadol. So Zakef Gadol actually looks like a sad frog. If you turn it sideways, it's like, see, the line is it's frowning mouth, sad mouth, and 2 eyes. So Zakef Gadol, but actually it's a katon and a sof pasuk mixed together. Probably, again, a case of saving, printing blocks and whatnot. We've had those symbols before. But over the word, the 2 of them together, you put the sof pasuk symbol next to the katon, and it's Zakef Gadol. Zakef Gadol. Okay, moving backwards. Group 10. Munach. Zarka. Munach. Segol. Great. Moving down again to group 11. Zakef Gadol. Zakef Gadol. Now, I'm going to skip over the next couple of groups. Why? Because Shalshelet happens 4 times in the whole Torah. And if you ever get it, you're going to ask me how to do it. Otherwise, here's what you have to learn for next week. Shalshelet. Any volunteers? Okay. You do not. You got to get out of jail free card. Joe wants to learn it. You can learn it if you want to. I don't even think I put it on the recording because people hear that and they go like, I quit. So yeah, the other one, Karnei Farah, which it means cow horns, is just a Tlishak Tana and Gdolah back to back. Karnei Farah, it's just Tlishak Tana, Tlishak Gdolah. So it really is chanted the way it looks. And Mercha Chfula, that's a double Mercha, which is, it happens like maybe twice in the Torah. So again, if you see these things, you can do my dad's technique. I think I told you everything past group 5, you just sing like a Rivi and fake it and hope that people don't know. But if you do have those things in your portions, I can help you with them. But to make it easy on you, I suggest let's skip them now. It's just not likely you're going to see them. Okay, so let's talk about group 14. So we talked about what the word aliyah meant literally. Remember? Who remembers this convo? Who remembers the literal Joe? So we talked about the literal meaning, the spiritual meaning, and the synagogue tachlis meaning. What were the meanings?
One was to go up, to ascend.
Yep.
Another is to go to Israel.
Yep.
And I don't remember the synagogue one.
Who remembers? So the problem with the synagogue one is it refers to 2 things, and sometimes people get confused, and it creates a tough situation. When somebody says you have been asked to do an aliyah, if they are vague and phrase it like that, to come up for an aliyah, to do the aliyah, they can be referring to 2 things. What
Now,
are they? Anyone? Joe,
now-
you want to?
Yeah, it's one is to recite the blessings before and after the reading, and the other is to actually do the reading.
Correct. So in the old days, as I indicated, they were one and the same. If you were called up, it was like if you're batting, you're fielding. If you're fielding, you're batting. There was no pinch hitter. If you were given the honor of an aliyah, and it was considered such an honor that people would literally, not just on the high holidays, but on Shabbat, they would bid. They would raise their hand and they would give cold hard cash. It was, if you get honored, you're contributing to the synagogue, and it became kind of a tacky thing in some synagogues. And now most places have stopped. You still see it sometimes in Israel where money bags will, raise his hand and they auction it off. Then you get up there in front of the community and you have the honor. These days, if you're asked to do an aliyah, they pretty much mean come up and do the blessing. But for the rest of us, we're in this class not for the honor of the blessing, but to be the designated Torah reader. So these days they would say you're going to read Torah, but traditionally they just say you're taking the fourth aliyah. That means you're reading it. Okay. Now every aliyah has a musical grand finale. And the grand finale, you've all heard it, and the congregation is supposed to chime in with you. Na 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 na. You've heard that, right? Now it's easy to chime in if you're reading the full Torah portion. Why? Because when you're following along in the Chumash, they show the breaks. They write Rishon in small print, which means first aliyah. Then at the end of Rishon, they write in small print Sheni, which is the end of the first and the beginning of the second. Then Shlishi. You will see this. You know where they break, you know where they end, you know where they start. So the congregation, when they're following along, they know to go na 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 na. Al pi Adonai biyad Moshe, whatever the phrase is. But what did I indicate to you? We do not read the full parsha. We read a triennial reading. So it always comes as a surprise to the congregants, unless you've got one of those yekas, a German Jew who carries his luach next to him and is always seeing what the aliyah breakdown is. There's always like one of those in the synagogue, the guy who stands up and screams when the rabbis or the cantor makes a mistake. I've been in those services, not fun. When I was 16 leading high holidays, we had one of those out there. I remember that. And my friend and I, his dad was a rabbi, like my father. We did this gig, and then he said, skip. Nobody wants to hear all these prayers. And we skipped a few. Then people got up and started shouting at us. It was the Yekis. You're not supposed to, nobody skips the Al Chais. Anyway, okay, so people don't know to chime in with you. So then what happens? I'm telling you all this for a reason. The person next to you, again, called the Gabbai, their job is mainly to help you, but their job is also, they're going to be singing this with you. However, in your mind, everything that comes out of their mouth is a correction. You're thinking, when I hear the Gabbai speak, I'm correcting it. So 9 out of 10 times when somebody's up there and they hear the Gabbai chime in with them, they get startled and they think they've screwed up the ending and they stop and they look startled. They're not correcting you. They're just cueing to the congregation, join in with me. This is the ending. Now the melody is different than the regular Mercha Tipcha, Mercha Sof Pasuk. But if you look at group 14, it looks identical, doesn't it? So the way I teach this is I teach Mercha Tipcha, Mercha Sof Aliyah. Now what does Sof Aliyah mean? If Sof Pasuk means end of the sentence, what does Sof Aliyah mean? I'm seeing you mouth it correctly. Yes, it means the end of the Aliyah. It's better to learn to chant it by going Sof Aliyah, in my view, because your brain doesn't want to conflate this with Sof Pasuk. Plenty of times before I taught it this way, I had people, and every time a sentence would happen, they'd do a grand finale after every single sentence of their Aliyah. And it becomes rather anticlimactic when you Vaidaber Adonai, almost more. That's how you start your portion. So your brain needs to learn them differently so that you end a normal sentence, Mercha Tipcha, Mercha Sof Pasuk. But then when the actual end comes, Mercha Tipcha, try that. Mercha Sof Aliyah. Again, Mercha Tipcha, Mercha Sof Aliyah. Now, you're not going to necessarily see all 4 of those together. There are permutations of this too. Let's do them. Tipcha, Sof Aliyah. Now, notice that the symbol for the end, Sof Aliyah, is no different than a Sof Pasuk, which is why we need to have a different word for it. So visually, you're not going to see a difference. You're just going to know when you're assigned. If I say, hey, can you read 4th Aliyah verses 4 through 12, that the last phrase of 12, there's always a Sof Pasuk ending every sentence, and the last Sof Pasuk that you have has to be a Sof Aliyah by default, okay? One more time. Mercha Tipcha, Mercha Sof Aliyah, or Mercha Tipcha Sof Aliyah, or Tipcha Sof Aliyah. So is everybody clear on the difference between groups 2 and group 14? If you were just to put on blinders and look, you'd have no idea. So this is a contextual thing, to quote the presidents of every formerly good university. Depends on the context. Okay, so any questions on any of this so far? Joe.
Quick question, and the actual text of a Sefer Torah, I know like the end of the Aliyah usually has an actual like end of a paragraph and spacing. Is that usually the case with the Sof Pasuk as well, or just the Aliyah?
So your first point actually isn't really true. I would say this. Oftentimes when there is a paragraph break, it more often than not can mean it's the end of one, but very frequently you've got 3 columns of the Torah in a row with no paragraphs, no breaks at all, and those are really hard to find where you're starting and ending. So there isn't a rule that says that a paragraph break is an aliyah break. The paragraph breaks came, I think, predate the aliyah breaks. You know, the practice of doing this on Shabbat and making it into 7 aliyot and dividing into parshas postdates the actual writing of the Torah and all that stuff. So it's, you just have to memorize it. There's no fail-safe way visually to know. Okay.
But do they, in this shul, do people, like other shuls I've been in, the, somebody points to it, but you have to find it yourself as the reader, I guess, right? In other
Well,
words,
no, two
nobody's going
different
to
things.
give you,
So
Mhm.
the gabbai
Mhm.
in a good shul or a good system, the gabbai will assume, especially if you're a new reader, that you're not going to know how to find it. They will point it to you. We also have this little doodad we bought, which is like a, what would you call it? You know, not a circle, blanking. The
Oval.
oval.
Well,
And it's like a silver oval with a hole in the middle. It's like an oval donut, like a bialy or something. And you basically place it as soon as one person finishes reading. It's heavy, so it doesn't fall off, which is great. So you place it right where you ended on the next word, so that the next person knows where his aliyah starts. So when you guys read, of course, we'll point it out to you. But, you know, like when I go up there and read, nobody's pointing it out to me unless they were sort of, you know, on their game and, you know, paying attention before. And oftentimes you walk up there and it's like I said, Joe, sometimes there are 3 columns with 0 breaks and it's just like, oh my God, I have to now scan. It's just like needle in a haystack city, and you kind of have to know the Torah really, really well, or know the plot and sort of quickly suss out where you are. But I wouldn't worry about that. You guys will have it all taken care of. Also, we have screenshots we've done of the whole scroll that we sort of send people beforehand, and then they do things like count down. Oh, my aliyah starts 5 lines down on the 4th word. So it's sort of an easy way of doing it if you know beforehand what it's going to be. Any other questions about any of this? Yeah, Ariella.
Yes, that silver thing can Rabbi Silver bring that, so when I do my Torah reading, which will be in Connecticut, she will be there, but it'll be a Thursday. Can
You
it?
can talk to her. I don't know.
Okay,
We've usually not lent these kinds of things out because they get lost even when they're at IKAR. And my
okay,
guess is if you're reading there, it's a moot point. If people don't know how to use it, not familiar with it, they're probably not going to do
okay.
much for it. I would just tell the people, that's my best advice. Just tell them, hey, need you to
Yeah,
cue me in where we start. And then
that
take your
they're
time
gonna
getting
know.
up there. The other, yeah, you take your time. If you get up there and then stand there while you're looking, it makes it look like you don't know. But if you saunter up there while they're searching, it makes it look like they don't know. So that's another little trick of the trade. Don't go up there till somebody's like, okay, found it. And then you see that look of relief on their face, and then you make your grand entrance. Okay, so let's review again from group 6 till the end. You guys are gonna have to brush up your Shakespeare and know these really well, because next week is our final class, and that's about applying all of this to the text. And that is something that's not going to work too well if you don't know the tropes. Okay, so group 6. Kad ma be'azla. Great. Group 7. Kad ma geresh. Group 8. Munach. Telisha gedolah. Group 9. No, I'm off by one. This is group 8. That was group 7. Right, that was a 6A that I screwed up. Okay, let's do it again from Telisha gedolah, which is group 7. Munach. Telisha gedolah. Group 8, Munach. Telisha ketana. Group 9, Munach. Pazer. Great. And group 10, the Munach is, of course, different, but you can keep the same one going if you want to. Munach. Zarka. Munach Segol. Group 11, Zakef Gadol. Again, group 11, Zakef Gadol. And since you guys wisely decided not to have me teach you the next two groups, we will jump to group 14. Mercha Tipcha. Mercha Sof Aliyah. Again, Mercha Tipcha. Mercha Sof Aliyah. Okay, so now we'll have some fun and do this. Let's unmute, and we will try to go through the room and have each person do a group. I'm not going to be mean and just randomly pick you, but you can raise your hand. Let's try to see if we can get everybody to
Just the
volunteer.
first
And of course, the first, yeah, that's always a chill when they're trying to. Oh, I'll do the first one because I'm such a good volunteer. Or you don't want to do the hard ones. All right, Rachel did have her hand up. So
Okay. Mercha Tipcha Munach. Oh, wait a second. No, I
that's
got
the
off.
grand
No.
finale you're doing.
I
now.
know. I'm sorry. I went
Uh-huh.
right back to the thing I heard just then.
You-
I'm sorry.
right.
Now I'm stuck. Hold on.
Mercha
Mercha-
Tipcha.
Well, yeah. Mercha Tipcha Munachet Nachta.
Missed
You
one
want
note
how
of the
many?
Munach. 3 notes to it.
Munachet
Munach.
Nach. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Mercha Tipcha Munachet Nachta.
Great. Now somebody else give us group 2. Oh no, we're not petering out on group 2.
And I can do that one.
Yeah, your teacher sucks if you guys can't do. Come on, somebody else. All right, Ariella. Are you muted or unmuted, Ariella?
Nah.
You're just thinking.
IKAR.
I'll start you up. Mercha.
Mercha. So. Yeah. Mercha.
Tipcha.
Tipcha. Mercha Sof Pasuk.
Sof Pasuk.
Sof Pasuk.
Okay, group 3. Level of difficulty goes up a little each time. Is this a premature test? Should we do this next week? I'm not seeing lots of hands flying.
I'll do it.
I'm not being blinded by hand waves here. Okay, Joe.
Kadma mapa pashta munach katon.
Nice. That sounded good. And then what about the variant, Joe? Want to keep going on 3A?
Yetiv munach katon.
Good. Group 4, Dargatavir. Anybody? Rachel.
Dargatavir.
Okay. And what about Merchatavir? Do you remember that one, Rachel? The variant?
Oh, yeah. Merchatavir.
Good. But here's where it starts to get harder. Anybody? Is that a hand up, Julie? Or just
Yes, I don't know why my screen went out. Sorry, guys.
Oh,
Okay.
So what did I just raise my hand to 5?
You raise your hand to pay for dinner for the whole class.
Yeah. Okay, but
Gershaim.
Gershaim, right?
Yes, Gershaim.
Gershaim munach rivi.
Oh, wow, guys. That was a high level of difficulty. She nailed it. The bar has just gone higher. Who's going to limbo?
I've done it recently.
Okay. Now, well, you know what? I've been asking everybody to do the variant for their group. So want to do the variant for 5A, Julie?
The variant, sure. Munach, excuse me, munach rivi.
Well, you're singing group 10 now. That's our cop. This is the Munach 5A.
Oh, I'm sorry. Munach rivi.
Great. No, that was great. Oh, no, actually, you kept going on Rivi E. You turned it into a.
I went a bit
It's
long.
okay.
Yes.
You went a bit long, but you had it the correct one. So you kept going.
Munach rivi.
Perfect.
Okay.
Now, Kadma Vaz, I told you that this is the same Kadma that we had in group 3. So this is, Rachel is smiling, but does that mean, oh boy,
Okay.
don't call on me, Hillel?
I can do.
oh,
Okay.
goody.
I know that trick. You mute yourself, and then you were muted. Do it so we can hear you. No,
Can you hear me now?
we can hear you now.
Okay, sorry about that. Kadma ve'azla,
Good. And how about the variant Kadma Geresh?
Kadma gerish.
We're doing pretty well. Not too shabby. I like that. Okay, so here's where it gets hard, and this is the stuff. Well, I think, am I correct that last week we did Klisha Gdola? I think we did.
I
So
wasn't here.
so I will not be so bold as to ask people who don't know this. This was homework, and this is something that goes on your permanent record. So Munach Tlisha Gdola Rezel.
I'm gonna mess it up, but I'm gonna try. Okay. Muna Delisha Gedola.
You actually got the hard one right and the easy
Oh,
one
and then
right.
Munach I
wrong.
got wrong. Okay,
The
I'm
Munach has
sorry.
3 notes. Try the Munach again.
See, I missed the class, so let me try to. I did listen though. Munach
You got
Delisha
it. So
Gedola.
let's build on that. That Munach was right. So who knows who
Mm.
wants to, based on what we just did tonight, do the Munach Tlishak Tana? I'm being mean asking you, Julie. Okay.
Muna Talisha Kitana.
Yeah.
This is great. Wow. Very good ear remembering that.
Yeah, I don't know why. Sorry, you guys don't care why it keeps coming out.
We can pretend to care though.
Yeah, thank you.
We do
What are we
care.
pretending to care about? A story about the trope, or just that we can't see you anymore?
I love Trope. I seriously, I really do. I've always enjoyed this.
Well,
So,
you're remembering it really well. That's great.
Thank
And also,
you.
like you said, you knew it at one point. So sometimes just like this is just about blowing the dust off of it, you know.
My
Okay.
cancer loved me as a kid.
In the good way, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Here's where it gets pretty hard though. Munach pazer. Let's have somebody else. Somebody who is a self-professed hater of tropes, not a lover of tropes like Julie. I want somebody who just can't stand this to get it right. No? I'll give it to you. Munach
Muna.
pazer.
That's it.
By the way, Rachel, I should have said this before. You look a lot like my daughter Mila. Anyone here know my daughter Mila? Joe, you've seen Mila, haven't you? Come on, give it
Yeah.
up for
Yeah.
doppelganger. You're very lucky, Rachel. I think Mila's the best.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you.
One more time. This is a hard one. Munach
Muna.
pazer.
Hazer.
That's great. Okay, 2 more and then the grand finale. Munach
Muna.
zarka.
Zarka.
Good. Munach segol.
Nasago.
Group 11, Zakef Gadol.
Zakif
A
Gadol.
grand finale. Merchat Tivcha.
Merchat
Merchat Sof Aliyah.
Merchat Sof
Great. So now,
It's a
raise your
cacophony.
real hand, or if your screen has blacked you out like Julie's for some glitchy reason, is who here is game for reading an Aliyah if we find a date that works for most or all of us at IKAR? That's Joe voting aye. Ariella clasping her hands and giving us a resounding. Okay, so Julie, that's a yes. Okay, so we have 1 Aliyah, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I'm in
That ma-
Boston.
But I don't, but it does depend on the week because I live half the time in Northern California. So just a
Depend
matter
on
of,
the week. Okay.
yeah.
Well, what
So, but
gets
I mean,
complicated
we'll-
about that, Razel, is because of the bar bat mitzvah schedule and like my vacation, like between now and summer, we have to find a date where you have, let's say 2 months is probably seems fair, yes, to learn something. I'm guessing 3 to 6 lines. 2 months, that means like at the earliest, probably beginning of March, and then that's high bar bat mitzvah season, which means our opportunities are going to be very few. They're probably going to be like 2 or 3 total weeks between then and the summer when I'm probably going to be gone. So we'll do our best to include everybody, but I can't promise it because of how tight things start to get scheduling wise.
No,
But I think we
I
need
know.
2 months.
I mean, in
Yeah,
other words, I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
I won't
So
worry about it.
what I will do then is I will try for next week to talk to everybody else and make sure that there's not some uncalendar event I'm forgetting about. I'll try to find a date with reasonably short aliyahs, which is, let's say, 2 or 3 months away, where there's no bar bat mitzvah, and then we'll try to divide it up. And by the way, if it turns out that there's a long aliyah, we're not opposed to doing tag team style. Meaning if there's an aliyah that's 10 verses, I can just make it into 2 or even 3. Because some of you, if you don't have to tell me now, but some people on the down low could say to me like, hey, I can't do more than 3. This is like a challenge for me. I'm nervous, which is fine, assuming that either there is a 3 verser or that somebody else is willing to share one with you that's longer. So I'll do my best to accommodate everybody, but obviously we're dealing with the calendar and with the reality of what the Torah is. But we'll just figure that out. Okay, so look, if you haven't been working on this each evening, I would strongly suggest that this week you put in 15 minimally minutes every night. Get these really as close to under your belt as you can, not just musically, but visually, because next week the visual part is going to really come into play when I give us, I'll just pick a random paragraph. It doesn't matter what I pick, but I'm going to put it up there on the screen, and then we're going to have to decipher, decode it and find the tropes within a page filled with consonants and vowels. I would also strongly suggest, if you need to goose your Hebrew reading, go to that Cartoon Hebrew website that I told you about. Look at the bottom and get the letters and get the vowels. I will tell you this quickly because we're running out of time and it's been a long day for me. So does somebody have a paragraph of Hebrew they can put up? Anything? Joe, do you have like a Torah paragraph? I mean, I've probably got 10,000 on my phone, but I want to give you a quick crash course in how to be an accurate reader. If you don't, Joe, I can just quickly text it to you.
It'd be better to email it to me.
Okay, so let me do that right now. Remind me where I'm sending this.
mix@joes@gmail.com. I
There
thought
we
I
go.
had one at the ready and I can't find it.
Okay, I just emailed it to you, so if you don't mind.
And I've
Take
made
that.
you co-host.
Thank you.
Joe, did it arrive?
Looking now. Hold on.
So let me start
Yes.
talk. So let me talk now as Joe's getting that up on the technique. Most people, when they're reading in any language, especially one that they're familiar with, use what linguists and whatnot called word recognition, meaning you know the context. If it's about baseball and the word is, and then the pitcher threw the ball and it's a word that's 5 letters starting with a C and ends in an R, you go like, it's catcher, but you actually don't read all the letters. Our brains are inherently lazy. We don't want to work more than we need to. So that works for a language that you know. The problem with Hebrew is, even if you know it or think you know it, biblical Hebrew ain't the same thing as colloquial Hebrew. And even within the Bible, there's poetic, there's prose, there's very old text, there's less old text. And so oftentimes a word which you think you know, shalom, could be shalem or shilum, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you can't have the luxury of assuming from context even that you know what's going on. So therefore, you have to train your brain to see the page not as a collection of words, but rather as a collection of syllables. Once you learn to read a syllable at a time, your accuracy will go up much higher. The problem is when people try to read a whole word at once, to spit out the whole thing, and there's too many vowels, too many letters, and you'll make little minor mistakes. So if you look, let's enlarge it, Joe. We don't need the whole thing. We can just you see that bottom purple box at line 28 that says maftir on sideways here? Yeah, right there. Okay, so here's what you do. You pretend you've got a metronome clicking and you read a syllable at a time. O, chel, ba, ke, sef, tash, bi, re, ni, ve, a, chal, ti. That's the exercise you want to do. Either literally you take a metronome or you just keep it rhythmic like that. Now, the trick in Hebrew rests on knowing the vowel called a shavah. Do you guys know what a shavah is? Okay, for those who don't know, if you look not at the first word, not at the second word, but the third word, which starts off the next line there, Joe, can you show us the word tash bireni? The second letter there, the shin, has 2 dots, vertical. That's called the shavah. Now you see how that is not bold-faced? When it's not bold-faced, it's silent. When it's silent, you pause after the shva, but never before it. It's not ta, she, be rainy. It's tash, be rainy. Now look at the next word. You see how the shava under the first letter is bold-faced? Whenever a shva comes under a first letter of a word, it's always bold-faced, which means it gets its own full syllable and an sound. You can just make it an for simplicity's sake. Ve chalti. It's not vachalti. It's not the same as the shva that came in the word before. It's ve achalti. In other words, when you have a bold-faced shva, you pause before it and after it. Now, sometimes they come in the middle of a word. If you're really good, let's go down one whole line to the first word. E, be, ra. You see how the middle letter is bold-faced? That's not ebra. It's be, ra. Now, that's a weird one because you have two shvas in a row. And the rule is if you have two shvas in a row and they are both weak syllables, meaning the trope does not fall on one of them, the accent point is not on either of them, that means the second one actually always gets an sound. You don't have to remember that as long as you just keep your eye on the sheet for whichever is bold-faced. So what does that mean? When you're divvying up syllables, you always have to be looking not just at the letter you're reading, but looking at the next letter to see if there's a shva. Why? Because if there's a shva and it's bold-faced, you need to pause your syllable before and then again after. But if it's a weak shva, not bold-faced, you do not stop. You include that letter in the preceding syllable, and then you pause after it. For example, let's go back up, Joe, to the second line, right. It's not ta, shit, be rainy. Who wants to do the syllable by syllable on that word for me?
Tosh, be rainy.
And if you were doing that rhythmically, it would be tosh, be,
Be
re,
rainy.
ni.
Right.
Now, the next word's a good example because we've got two shavas. Who can do this the way that I want you to do it, rhythmically and with the proper pauses? Anybody want to do it? Razel.
Ve a chalti.
Perfect. So everybody see how she paused after. Now, it's a little weird because when you have the shvas, the first letter, there is no pausing before it. So in both cases, you paused after it. You did it right. But now let's find another one where the shvas. Okay, let's go to the third line. Well, that's a hard one, but it's. Who can do the third line before the number 29, 2 words before it?
I
First.
can, wait a minute. Oh, this one?
No, up. Joe, can you point to, yeah, that word?
Pardon me. Bar, the, Ebara,
Well, bira, but you had the right idea with the syllables. Bira. You pause both before the bet because it's bold-faced and after it. So this is an important lesson. You have to get the schwa thing down. Once you get that down, your eye can then learn how to break up the words properly into syllables and you will be accurate. My suggestion is you read for 5 minutes out loud every night, slow but rhythmic. O, chel, ba, ke, sef, tash, bi, re, ni. Now, if you didn't do that, most people would go like this: Ochel, bakasef, tashbarant, tashbarani. Like you hear I made a couple little mistakes. They're just
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
buried in there. If you bite off the big words, you're going to do that. And then what happens when you say something out loud incorrectly and you do it every night for a
correct it.
week? You learn it really well, really wrong. Better not to study at all than to study incorrectly because your brain, whether or not you want it to, is always learning. And the more you do anything, the more ingrained it's going to be. So you don't want to do this wrong. So I suggest getting your Hebrew recited like I did, a syllable at a time, nice and slow. The speed in the end gets to the point where most teachers will say, slow down. This is not a race. You're going way too fast. Okay. Even if you start crazy slow now, you're going to, as your brain knows how to do it faster, automatically go faster until the point where you're going too fast and then you're going to be asked to slow down. Don't worry about going too slow. You only have to worry about going too fast. So that's a second track. Next week, we're going to warm up a little bit more with the reading stuff. But mainly, I still want you to get the tropes down. And then next week, the application part comes. And some of you probably have had experience with this before, but this is a key step. Okay, any final questions? Joe, you can take that down. If anybody feels like having that shared with them, by the way, just so that you have a good sheet for practicing with the bold-faced vowels, maybe we can put it in the chat or something, Joe, or like the link, however you guys disseminate this stuff.
Joe, if you send it to me, I'll send it out to everybody.
Okay, but Ariella, make sure that people know that the homework isn't like
Yeah.
learn how to sing this. Just say like this is a random
Yep.
piece of Hebrew Hillel gave us just because it shows us the bold-faced Shava
Yep.
vowel. Okay, any questions, folks, on the tropes or on the reading or on the Torah assignment that we're trying to gear up towards doing? Okay, good. So we got through everything, and now the onus is on you to memorize everything. So if you need to be doing 30 minutes a night, do it. But this is really the week to work your hardest, because the more you know these tropes, next week's going to seem doable and comfortable for you. But if you're still unclear about the tropes, it's going to seem horribly confusing and off-putting, which we don't want. All right, so great to see you. Chag Sameach, everybody.
Thank you. Chag
And
Sameach.
I will
Chag
see you same
Sameach.
bat channel next
Thank
week. Okay?
you.
My
Bye.
pleasure. Good luck, guys. Sounds great. Good to see
Thank
you.
you,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Joe and Ariella.
You're welcome.
Take care.
Hillel?
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right.